Hello everyone. Welcome to the Polity discussion with Rohit Narang. In this series, I am going to take some of the prelims concepts that have always been dreadful for the students to learn. So, in this lecture, I am going to discuss some of the basic differences between different kind of bills that are introduced in different houses of the parliament. So, if we classify some of the bills, all of the bills that are introduced in parliament can be classified into four areas. Either it can be an ordinary bill, either it can be a money bill, either it can be a finance bill, or it can be a constitutional amendment bill. See, there is no definition of any of the bill except ordinary bill. And even if you see the definition of ordinary bill, simply it says any bill which is not money bill, which is not finance bill, or which is not constitutional amendment bill is simply an ordinary bill. And it's actually a very simple definition of an ordinary bill. Any bill which is not money bill, finance bill, or constitutional amendment bill is simply a ordinary bill. And there is no particular article that talks about the ordinary bill. But if we say about the money bill, article 110 clause 1 subclause A to subclause G of the constitution talks about various areas under which a money bill can also be introduced. Now, if we see the finance bill is under article 117 clause 1 of the constitution. I will also be taking a video where I will be telling you the basic difference between the finance bill and the money bill. I have seen a lot of students getting confused among the differences between the money bill and the finance bill. And everyone knows the constitutional amendment bill is introduced under article 368 of the constitution, which simply says you can alter every part of the constitution through constitutional amendment, but it must not tinker with the basic structure of the constitution. See, if I talk about the introduction of these type of bills, we know an ordinary bill can be introduced either in Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha. The ordinary bill can be introduced in both the houses of the parliament. There is no segregation between the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha when it comes to the different powers. But a money bill must only be introduced in Lok Sabha but not in Rajya Sabha. Money bill cannot be introduced in Rajya Sabha. It's a relative prerogative of the Lok Sabha only. Now, if we see the finance bill, always remember finance bill is equal to money bill only in two aspects. Please remember, finance bill is equal to money bill only in two aspects, that is the introduction as well as the recommendation. In rest of the areas, a finance bill is nothing but an ordinary bill. So we can say it is introduced in Lok Sabha, not in Rajya Sabha. Similarly, the finance bill will be introduced in Lok Sabha but not in Rajya Sabha. I told you it is one of the areas where finance bill is definitely equal to the money bill. And the constitutional amendment bill again can be introduced in the both houses of the parliament. It can be introduced either in Lok Sabha, either in Rajya Sabha. Now, if we see the recommendation of the president, do you need the prior recommendation of the president before introduction of the bill? See, if you are going to introduce an ordinary bill, you do not need the prior recommendation of the president. But please remember there is a caveat or there is an exception here. Every bill that introduces or changes Article 2 or Article 3 of the Constitution, any bill concerning Article 2 or Article 3 of the Constitution must require the prior recommendation of the President. What do you mean by Article 2 or Article 3? When you are going to change the name, area or boundary of any state, or when you are going to create a new state, you will be requiring the prior recommendation of the President. But it is only those two cases in ordinary bill where you will be requiring the recommendation of the President. In every other case, there is no prior recommendation of the President. But when it comes to the finance bill or the money bill, you do need the prior recommendation of the president. Yes, you do need the prior recommendation of the president in case of finance bill as well as money bill. Now these two areas are over where the finance bill was nothing but a money bill. Now, in every other aspect, we can see a finance bill is nothing but an ordinary bill. So, if we see about the constitutional amendment bill, here we also do not need the presidential recommendation. Here we also do not need the presidential recommendation. So, always remember there are two cases where we need the presidential recommendation, that is the money bill as well as the finance bill. Now, if we see the other aspects, what is the majority required in ordinary bill? Everyone knows you need a simple majority in the passage of an ordinary bill. What is simple majority? Simply, it is the majority of 50% of the legislators that are present and that are voting. So, you will be needing a simple majority in case of the ordinary bill. You will also be needing a simple majority in case of the money bill also. Here you will also be needing a simple majority, 50% of the present and voting. And lastly, I told you in every aspect except two aspects, a finance bill is nothing but an ordinary bill. Please focus on this statement only in two areas, introduction as well as the recommendation of the president. The finance bill is equal to money bill, but in every other sphere, the finance bill is nothing but an ordinary bill. So here it will be simple majority. That means 50% of the present and voting. Now comes the constitutional amendment bill. Please remember the constitutional amendment bill does not pass with a simple majority, rather it passes with a special majority. Now you will be asking, sir, what is the special majority here? See, it is the 50% of the total membership of the house plus 2/3 of the members present and voting. I will be taking a separate class where I will be discussing different kind of majority like special majority, as well as one special majority is there which is used in the presidential impeachment. There is a simple majority as well as there is an effective majority. I will be discussing all kind of majorities in a separate class that is focused on clearing the prelims concept. So now if we see the next component, that is the relative comparison of the legislative powers of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. See, in case of ordinary bill, the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are equal. The Lok Sabha, the legislative powers of Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha are equal. Say for example, Lok Sabha passes the bill, but Rajya Sabha does not pass. Or Lok Sabha passes the bill, Rajya Sabha suggests some amendments to the Lok Sabha, and in turn Lok Sabha rejects those amendments. So these are some of the cases where the bill will be having some kind of disagreement, and when it comes to the disagreement, we can say the relative comparison of the legislative powers of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So we can see Lok Sabha is equal to Rajya Sabha in case of ordinary bill, but in case of money bill, Lok Sabha yields very high powers when it comes to the Rajya Sabha. The Lok Sabha is more powerful than Rajya Sabha in case of money bill. See, every student asks, sir, why the Lok Sabha gets more power when it comes to the money bill but not Rajya Sabha. See, the mandate of Lok Sabha is very higher than the mandate of Rajya Sabha. The Lok Sabha parliamentarians are getting directly elected by the people, so definitely they got a larger democratic mandate when it is compared to the Rajya Sabha people who are not directly elected by the people of the country. Okay, so here the Lok Sabha is greater than the Rajya Sabha because here all the powers lie with the Lok Sabha. The maximum thing the Rajya Sabha can do is to get the bill late by 14 days. It is the maximum that the Rajya Sabha can do. Rajya Sabha can suggest amendments. It is up to the Lok Sabha whether to accept those amendments or not. So at max, the Rajya Sabha can suggest changes. It can do nothing else. Now, if we see the finance bill, I told you finance bill is just an ordinary bill. So I can say Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are equal again. Or I can say Lok Sabha is equal to Rajya Sabha. And the constitutional amendment bill again is the perfect example, where the Lok Sabha is absolutely equal to Rajya Sabha. See, I told you in ordinary bill there is a provision that Lok Sabha is equal to Rajya Sabha, but there is a caveat here. When there is disagreement, there is a provision of joint sitting. And if we see, when there is a joint sitting, the higher majority, or I can say there are more number of people in Lok Sabha than Rajya Sabha, which gives more powers, more favor to the Lok Sabha. Also, the joint sitting is headed by the Speaker of Lok Sabha, but not the chairperson of Rajya Sabha. But if I talk about the constitutional amendment bill, it is that perfect area where the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are perfectly equal, because the bill needs to be passed by both the houses separately, because there is no provision of joint sitting when it comes to constitutional amendment bill. So now if we see the deadlock resolved through, I have already told you, there is a provision of joint sitting where generally it is the will of the Lok Sabha that prevails because of the higher number of MPs. In case of money bill, there is no question of joint sitting, because it is the Lok Sabha that is having more powers when it is compared to the Rajya Sabha. So if the Lok Sabha has introduced a bill, then definitely there are more chances that it will get passed, because the Rajya Sabha does not have much say in case of passage of the money bill. And I told you finance bill is nothing but a ordinary bill. So here there will also be a concept of joint sitting of the parliament, again headed by the Speaker of Lok Sabha. And if the Speaker is not available, then the President will decide who will be heading the joint sitting of the Parliament. Now, if we see Constitutional Amendment Bill, see, Constitutional Amendment Bill will become the Constitutional Amendment Act when it is passed by both the houses separately. You cannot have the bill becoming an act if there is a disagreement between the two houses. The Lok Sabha must need to pass it separately, the Rajya Sabha must need to pass it separately, and then it will go to the President for the final assent. So here there is no question of joint sitting, because the bill must be passed by both the houses in a separate fashion. And lastly, there is the question of presidential assent. See, in ordinary bill, the president got the veto. He may pass the bill will become an act. He may withhold his assent, the bill will die altogether, and he may return the bill for reconsideration of the houses. And lastly, he may do nothing. He may use his pocket veto, where he will not take any action on the bill. So similarly, we can say here the veto can be used. So here if the veto can be used, then I can say in the case of finance bill, it can also be used. But if I talk about the money bill, there is a convention, that the president gives the assent. President gives the assent. Please remember, here is the difference between the money bill and the constitution bill. When it comes to money bill, the president got two options. Either he may give the assent, or either he may withhold the assent. There are no options of returning the bill. He may give the assent, the bill will become act. He may withhold the assent, the bill will die. But by convention, it has been established that the president will always give the assent to the money bill. See, conventions are something that are established practices that are being followed in the parliament. Conventions are not there in constitution, they are not in the rules of Lok Sabha. They are just general practices that have long been followed in England, and on the lines of the England, on the lines of the Government of India Act 1935, we have also been following the way of conventions. So we can say by convention, it is not written in the constitution, the president must give the assent to the money bill. But if I talk about the constitutional amendment bill, it is not by convention, but according to the constitution, the president is bound. The president is bound to give the assent to give the assent to a constitutional amendment bill. It is not by convention, rather, it is constitutionally defined that the president must give the assent to a constitutional amendment bill. So, here there are some of the components that we have discussed when it comes to the different kind of bills. Let me remind you once again: constitutional ordinary bill, any bill which is not money bill, finance bill, or constitutional amendment bill will simply be a ordinary bill. Money bill will be under Article 110, Clause 1, Subclause A to Subclause G. Finance bill under Article 117, Clause 1. And everyone knows the constitutional amendment bill under Article 368. Both houses can introduce an ordinary bill, and both the houses can also introduce a constitutional amendment bill. But the money bill and finance bill will be introduced only in Lok Sabha, not in Rajya Sabha. Do we need a recommendation of the president in case of ordinary bill? No, we do not, but until or unless it is concerning Article 2 or Article 3 of the Constitution. We do not need the presidential recommendation in case of constitutional amendment bill, but we do need the presidential recommendation in case of the finance bill as well as the money bill. And if we see about the majority required, it is the simple in the first three cases and the special majority in case of constitutional amendment bill. Legislative powers of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha is equal to Rajya Sabha in case of ordinary bill as well as the finance bill, and the perfectly equal in case of constitutional amendment bill. I told you why it is perfectly equal, and in case of money bill, Lok Sabha is always greater than the Rajya Sabha. Resolving deadlock through joint sitting in case of ordinary bill and finance bill. Question उठेगा नहीं money bill में, because there is no concept of equality between the both houses of the parliament. But in case of constitutional amendment bill, they are perfectly equal because they do need to pass the bill separately. Okay, so presidential assent, the veto can be used in case of ordinary bill as well as the finance bill. What do you mean by veto? The president can withhold the assent, the president can give the assent, the president can send back the bill for reconsideration, as well as president cannot take any action and just use the pocket veto. And there is a convention that the president must give the assent in case of money bill, and the president is bound to give the assent in case of constitutional amendment bill. I hope this lecture was a little bit helpful for your UPSC prelims preparation. We will be coming with more such videos where I will be taking those topics that have been always been difficult for the students to understand. So we will be meeting in the next video. Till then, keep revising and keep learning. All the best. Thank you.